Hey, welcome everybody. Welcome back to Talk is Cheap, Security Isn't. I'm Kathy Pace.
And I'm Marie Phillips, and we're a part of ZK Techo USA.
So we're here, we're starting a new series. We're done with school security for now. We're going to talk about data centers.
Mm-hmm.
So, but just to go step back one step, I just want to tell you about why we're doing these podcasts. So the podcast is, we're taking real world security challenges and we're giving you practical solutions, right? And so the practical solutions, of course, are going to involve some
ZK
things that we
Techo,
sell.
Yeah.
Okay, so Marie, what are we talking about today?
So today we're kind of giving an intro on data centers, on how we can secure data centers, and kind of, some questions to ask and to think about when you are wanting to apply access control to data centers.
So the data center is completely different. It's a different beast, right, than what we talked about last time. It's a totally different environment when it comes to security challenges. So we're not just protecting the building, right? Because in this instance, the building is not what we're trying to protect. It's what's inside the building, right? So the data, we're protecting the data. We're protecting, millions of dollars worth of equipment and also the information that is stored on those servers.
Definitely, yes. So we're going to get a little bit more about why data centers are different, but some of you may be asking what a data center is exactly. So it is a physical facility that organizes things like company data, customer data, financial information, and cloud infrastructure. So while it may be like a new and upcoming thing that you're hearing data centers going up around everywhere, which actually nearly 3,000 data centers are under construction or planned across the United States as of late 2025.
Did you say 3,000?
Yes, 3,000.
Lord, that's a lot.
Yes, so there is a lot of data centers, but coming up because, we're constantly working
using
with new
data.
technology and stuff.
Absolutely.
But you are probably using them without even knowing it because they host cloud providers, data centers, infrastructure, like host cloud native applications. So you may be using applying or using a data center and you might not even know it. But yeah, that's a little bit about it.
So let's compare it to like something everybody knows about, like maybe like a banking establishment that has like a safe deposit box. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about that and how that differs.
So in this case, when you think of a bank, you usually think of like a big vault that's in the back and you have to like anchor it to open it. You can compare that to a data center. A data center is just going to be that building that houses and protects all that data and the actual physical components such as like routers, servers, switches, and the storage infrastructure. We want to protect all that different physical assets, just like how we do in a bank, except it's with that stuff instead of money, maybe jewelry, and things
whatever. So these places can get breached, right? And it's not, it just doesn't mean that there's a theft. Like in your instance, if it were a bank, someone could go in there and steal physical things, right? But in this case, it might be a data breach, right? It might mean system downtime for people when these breaches are happening. You might not be able to log into all of your all the things you need to log in. Of course, there's loss of business when data is breached, and there's a lot of legal issues. When data is breached. So in most buildings, a security breach isn't a problem, right? But in a data center, a security breach is a disaster.
So Kathy, when you talk to customers, do they usually realize like how different a data center security is, how different it is based to like an office building like we're in?
I really don't think they do. I mean, because they're just not out there in the world, right? Like we have a data center next to us here. And when I said that to people a couple of days ago, they were like, wait, what? Where is this data center, right? So you really don't know looking into it if it's going to be an office building or a data center, right? So I don't think people really realize how different it is.
Yes, but when you finally realize it's a data center, the access control to get into that building is a lot different than just that normal building.
Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about the risks, some of the biggest risks to data centers, right? So it's not it's not threats, right? It's not the threats that people expect in a data center is what I'm trying to say. So one of the biggest things I would imagine would be unauthorized access, because, that's what we're here today, is to tell you a little bit about how to control access, right?
Yes.
Access control.
Access control.
Insider thefts.
Yes.
So people who actually got in and are doing things that could be disastrous.
To not only the company, but its customers as well.
Right, to the data,
users.
right,
Exactly.
right. Tailgating. So we're going to have an entire episode on tailgating coming up. So stay tuned for that. I think another risk is maybe like vendors who are coming in, contractors who are fixing things, technicians that are coming in. So we're going to talk a little bit about each one of those in other episodes, but a little bit more today. Here's one, a former employee who has a grudge, maybe, or not, that's still active. That could be a huge threat to the data center. And then, all in all, with all of these things, a lack of an audit trail, right? So if you don't know where someone is inside the data center at all times, that is definitely could be disastrous and a big issue.
Exactly. So let's go over one of these top risks. So let's choose tailgating. So one of the most common security risks is tailgating. So when someone swipes a card and another person follows them in without swiping. So, we register that first person entered the building by them swiping the card, but we have no idea that the second person tailgated it and followed them into the building. And that is a big security risk because we want to know who came in and out of the building. If you don't know exactly who entered it and when, you don't really have security. You have the appearance of security. And like we mentioned, we'll go more into depth about how we can find a solution for this with our products in another episode.
Yeah, I mean, we're just going to have one episode on tailgating, I think, coming up very soon. All right. So let's talk about the journey, Marie.
The journey.
I love to talk about the journey. So we're going to talk about the security journey in a data center environment, right? And so that journey starts at the parking lot. Some people might say, oh, well, wouldn't it start at the door?
At the front door, yeah.
Yeah, no, it starts at the parking lot. So security isn't one point in the data center, right? It's this whole controlled path. So we need to control the path of the data center. So let's walk through what it would kind of look like, okay? Just like in a regular data center environment when someone arrives.
Exactly. So let's go through step one. So as you mentioned, step one is going to be the parking lot or the perimeter of the building. So when someone drives through the data center and they get to the parking lot, we want a controlled entry points. We want to know who is coming into those entry points. Maybe we can have a gate and have credentials and people scan into the gate, and that creates a controlled entry point. Not only that, we can also maybe add security guards for awareness or cameras for awareness, so we know who is actually in the building and we can kind of time it with that authorized credential point, access point. So security starts before someone even touches the building. So next, step two is going to be the building entrance. So we do not want a front building entrance that has an unlocked front door.
No.
Because sometimes that could lead to a disaster. So we want the door to be locked. Not only that, but we want someone to be, if they are an employee, to have a credential required to enter, or maybe a possible intercom if it's a visitor so they can get in, or a visitor management system. So getting into that building should require permission. So step three, that's going to be the lobby and reception area, and I'm going to let you take on that one, Kathy.
Okay, so now we've gotten through the parking lot. We've gotten into the building. So this is where we're going to have a guest speaker come on in a couple of weeks, and they're going to talk about turnstiles. You might want to put a turnstile there with a reader that only lets the person who has the correct credential to enter. You could put in a metal detector. I think that would be appropriate now too, right? Because what if someone wanted to do some harm? They could easily bring in something that was metal. So we're going to have a guest, and they're going to talk about those two things, turnstiles and metal detectors. But not only that, we need a couple of visitor management kind of ideas, right? So we need a way for visitors to check in. And we need like a way to show it, like a physical badge or some kind of a badge for visitors, right?
Identification.
Yep. And also what our visitor management system does which I think would be great in this instance, is host notification. So when the visitor checks in with the correct credentials, the host would get a note, an email saying, hey, your guest is here, right? But the whole idea is we don't want anybody just roaming around. No free roaming, right? We need to control. We need it to be hard to get into. We need it to be secure. We need to know. We need to know that everybody is accounted for in every security point.
Yes, because not only is it like a peace of mind for you, but for your customers as well, to know that their data that's being stored on your servers is being safeguarded, not only on the what's it called, on the network, but also with physically as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, so now, so we've gotten through the lobby.
Yes. So what's next?
What's
Step
next?
4.
What's next in the journey, Marie?
So step 4 is interior access points. So we got into the lobby. Now we actually want to go maybe to the different hallways, different floors, or different rooms. So we want there to be restricted hallways where not everyone can enter, maybe like a certain, where there's a more of a higher risk area. We don't want them to be able to enter that. We want restricted hallways or restricted rooms, or maybe even restricted floors where you keep it on a certain floor. Not only that, we want it based on maybe their access level or their role. So like I mentioned, no, we don't want everyone to be able to enter that place. So just because you're in the building doesn't mean you should have access to everything. And then it's going to lead into step 5, which is the data center / server room, or like the cage cabinet. So this is where we're going to have the highest level of restriction. You know, there may be lines and lines of like different cabinets.
Rows and rows.
Cages.
Rows.
That's
rows
what
and
it
rows
is.
of cabinets. Either one, lines, rows. We get it. We get aisles.
Aisles is a good one.
Yeah.
Like we're in Walmart. So this is where we're going to have the highest level of restriction, because, you know, you have all these different aisles, but you only want them to be able to access a specific cage.
Right.
So how can we restrict this? So let's say, for example, maybe we are a technician that is going to do some maintenance on a specific cage. We only want them to be able to access that certain one, and we can do this through our access control system. Not only that, but we can also do multi-factor authentication, so we know that the technician is who he says he is.
Right.
So it can be maybe like they scan their card, but we also have scan their face, authenticate their face, so we know that it's actually him, and he says who he is.
Yeah.
Exactly. And then limited personnel. So like we mentioned earlier, making sure that they only have access to certain parts where they want. Like this technician only has access to that room at that time, and then to that server cage. So by the time someone reaches the data center cage, they should have already verified multiple times.
Yes.
And like you mentioned, security isn't one door. It's a journey.
It's a journey. And then, you know, just to reiterate, we'll have these full audit trails, right?
Exactly.
So now the data center, you know, can have a trail of, you know, who got in the parking lot, who got in the lobby, who got in the, you know, so we'll have a trail, an audit trail for compliance, for legal, for customers, for everybody. We'll have this whole audit trail of who was where and when they were there and when they left. So, yeah, so that brings up the next point. I guess that was my segue into point number 5, which was accountability and audit trails. So we need to be able, the data center needs to be able to track who entered at what time. We need to be able to pull up later on if there's an incident, who was there, lots of things. So for report, we need to even see if like a door was held open,
so
or pried open,
maybe
or
like if the technician is at the door, it has the data center cage door open, we know how long he was working on it for, because it's going to say door held open, and we'll be able to track that through our access control audit trails.
Right. So, you know, I mean, I think that would be good for billing purposes too, because they might, you know, falsify how long they were there so they could get paid more or whatever. I'm not saying they would, but maybe.
Just an example.
So in a data center environment, right, every access event should be recorded and every door should be accountable.
Even though they're not people, they should be accounted.
Yeah, they should be accounted for, I guess I should say. All right, Marie. So we got a lot to talk about coming up in the next couple of weeks, right? But our preview for next week, what are we going to talk about next week so everybody can get ready?
So next week we're going to talk about perimeter doors, server rooms, man traps, and how all these different layers work together to create a whole ecosystem of access control. And it's going to be based on our solution, ZK Teco USA.
Right. So we're going to talk about layered security. We love layered security in this podcast.
We do. We talked about it last time.
We had 7 layers last time. I wonder if I think we're going to only have 6. 7?
7, I think.
7? That's what I said, 7.
Okay. Yeah, I thought you said 6.
So we're gonna see if we can have 7 layers this time. I think we should make it at the
7-layer cake. Yes.
Oh yeah, 7-layer dip. Yeah. There's lots of things that are 7 layers. All right. So we're wrapping it up for today, but I always want to encourage you, our audience members, to write in. You can comment in the bottom of this podcast. You can also write to us at info@ZK Teco USA if you have any questions. But I just want to pose a few questions for you as you're thinking about data centers and how to secure them, right? And then as we move towards next week, these will be some questions that maybe we can answer. So, do you have audit trails showing who accessed critical rooms? That could be something that you could write to us about. Do you know who entered the server rooms after hours?
Yes.
How are you managing the people that work at the data center? How are you managing their access control? So we got a lot to do.
We got a lot to cover, yes.
We got a lot to talk about. So please do write in and comment. We would love to hear from you.
Yes, definitely.
Talking about that, we have a recommendation coming in from Kevin. He's asking you guys whether you can do any demos for them while you're talking about these solutions.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So I guess the next podcast we can actually do a demo and kind of show you how our solution will be applied to a cage or a cabinet where the servers are actually housed in. Yes, we can definitely do that, Kevin.
Yep. Thanks, Kevin. That's a good idea.
Exactly.
Yep. And we might even do, if we can make it work, Marie, maybe we could pretend like
Do a
we're in
walkthrough.
a walkthrough, like
Mm-hmm.
we're in the parking lot and then we're in the lobby and then we're
in my car. Exactly.
So I think that would be a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's definitely.
So-
Kevin, thank you for the idea. We will definitely be doing that.
Yeah. So that'll be one of them. And then again, I think in the tailgating episode, we're going to have a guest from our entrance control team, and he's going to, go through some of the entrance control options that we have here at ZK Teco USA.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. So that wraps it up, I
Definitely,
think, for
yes.
this week, Marie. So remember, my name is Kathy Pace.
And my name is Marie, and thanks for joining us for
Talk is cheap, security isn't.
We'll see you next
Bye-bye.
week. Bye.